Choose one instrument right now: a black grand piano, a violin with its bow, an acoustic guitar, or a silver drum kit. Pick the one that pulls at something inside you, and I'll reveal the rhythm of your soul. But here's what you don't know yet. The real answer isn't the instrument itself. It's a hidden pattern buried in why you chose it, and you won't see it coming until the very end, when one detail surfaces that changes everything. Make your choice now, because in exactly 3 minutes, you'll notice something your eyes already saw, but your conscious mind filtered out. 4 white pedestals stand in perfect symmetry, each holding a different voice. The black piano rests on the left, keys arranged in chromatic order like a locked code waiting to be cracked. Next comes the violin, fretless and demanding, where every note lives or dies by millimeters of finger placement. Third sits the acoustic guitar, portable and self-contained, needing no permission to make complete music. Finally, the silver drums anchor the right side. No melody, no harmony, just the pulse that existed before words. Your choice isn't random. It's a psychological signature, an archetypal pattern that reveals how you organize experience, process emotion, and move through the world. These aren't just instruments. They're symbols speaking a language older than individual preference. Music bypasses intellectual gatekeepers and goes straight to emotional territory where archetypes live. Universal blueprints of behavior that Jung mapped decades ago. When you feel drawn to one instrument over another, you're recognizing a symbolic representation of something essential in your psychological makeup. The piano builder, the violin storyteller, the guitar wanderer, and the drum keeper each carry distinct ways of being, and one mirrors what you need to understand about yourself right now. There's no right or wrong answer here. What matters is that first pull you felt before thinking, stepped in to justify or question it. Hold your choice in awareness as we move forward, but don't rush to interpretation. The insight will emerge through layers. First, the obvious qualities of your instrument, then the shadow it carries, and finally, the unexpected connection that ties everything together. Don't jump to conclusions. In about 90 seconds, you'll recognize something your intuition already knows but hasn't named yet. Musical archetypes operate deeper than cultural conditioning. A drum pattern evokes tribal memory in someone who's never attended a ceremony. A violin's vibrato unlocks grief with no specific story attached. This happens because instruments carry archetypal signatures, patterns of energy and meaning that resonate with structures already present in human consciousness. The 4 instruments on these pedestals represent 4 distinct pathways, 4 different ways your psyche can organize itself and relate to reality. The piano demands structure and rewards complexity. The violin requires emotional precision and offers infinite expressiveness. The guitar claims autonomy and self-sufficiency. The drums speak the oldest language, rhythm that connects individual heartbeat to collective movement. Your intuitive choice reveals which relationship feels most natural to your psyche right now. Notice I say right now. Archetypal patterns aren't fixed identities, but energies flowing through us with varying intensity throughout life. You might live primarily through one pattern while another waits in shadow, ready to emerge when circumstances shift. The instrument you didn't choose also carries information. Sometimes we avoid certain archetypes because they represent qualities we've pushed away or haven't integrated yet. There's a reason this choice keeps showing up in people with similar histories. We'll get to that in just one more step. Simply remember which pedestal drew your attention, Which instrument made you pause before rational analysis began? That pause contains wisdom, the moment when unconscious speaks before conscious ego manages and interprets. In that fraction of a second, you accessed something true about your inner rhythm, the way your psyche naturally organizes experience and expresses what lives beneath everyday awareness. The instruments wait, and each has a story about the person who chooses it. The black grand piano on the first pedestal carries centuries of weight, not just physical construction, but psychological architecture. If your eyes went there first, if something recognized that glossy surface and the promise of 88 keys in chromatic perfection, you live through structure. You find freedom not in chaos, but in boundaries that make complex harmony possible. The piano archetype speaks to those who need to build, to organize, to hold multiple layers of reality simultaneously. Left hand establishing foundation, while right hand sings melody, pedal adding color that makes mathematics breathe. Here's what piano people won't admit: that need for structure often grows from early encounters with disorder that felt unbearable. The piano becomes safe container, a place where every note has designated position, where logic and emotion coexist in predictable relationships. You don't guess where notes are. Don't search for pitch like a violinist groping in darkness. Keys wait in reliable succession, offering comfort of knowing exactly where fingers need to land. This is both gift and shadow. It protects from chaos, but can become fortress keeping out wild, unpredictable elements of life that don't fit neat, harmonic progressions. Piano people struggle with specific vulnerability: fear of being caught without plan, without structure to reference when things fall apart. You notice this elsewhere: needing systems before beginning, discomfort with improvisation that doesn't follow recognizable patterns, preference for knowing the score before performance starts. None of this is wrong. Structure serves crucial function in human development. Problems arise only when structure calcifies into perfectionism, when fear of wrong notes keeps you from playing at all. The piano connects deeply to what Jung called the thinking function, the part organizing, categorizing, creating meaning through logical relationships. If drawn to this instrument, you probably see patterns, understand how elements combine into larger systems, appreciate elegant complexity of Bach fugue, where melodic lines weave through each other in mathematically precise counterpoint. You find beauty in architecture, in how things fit together, in moments when disparate parts cohere into unified whole. This is your strength, building cathedrals of sound and meaning where others see random notes. Every strength carried too far becomes weakness. Piano's shadow manifests as emotional rigidity. Living exclusively through structure and control, you lose access to spontaneous, messy feelings that don't resolve neatly like dominant seventh moving to tonic. Piano people report sensing being locked inside their own architecture, watching life through bars of perfectly constructed cage. They know intellectually emotions are valid, but actually feeling them, letting grief shake foundation or joy scatter arranged papers, terrifies in ways rarely articulated. The instrument offering control becomes symbol of how little they allow losing control, even when that might be exactly what's needed. Your practical step for next 72 hours. Find one small area where you deliberately loosen structure. Not destroy it, just soften. Play song without sheet music. Have conversation without planning responses. Take walk without deciding route in advance. Notice discomfort arising when stepping outside predictable pattern. And instead of rushing back to safety, simply observe. What does discomfort feel like in your body? Where do you hold it? What story does mind tell about what happens if you don't maintain perfect control? You don't need answers or fixes. Just notice with same precision you bring to finding right key. Your anchor phrase, words to return when need for control, rises and threatens to overwhelm. I am safe enough to soften. Say it quietly when gripping too tightly, when fear of disorder constructs walls between you and direct experience. Piano will always offer reliable structure when genuinely needed, but you don't need it every moment. Sometimes most beautiful music happens in space between notes. In silence, architecture makes possible, but cannot control. Coming up in less than 2 minutes, a practice that will test this feeling against reality. The violin resting on second pedestal with bow laid beside represents something entirely different from piano's orderly architecture. If drawn here, you live in space between notes, in microtonal territory, where precision meets vulnerability in ways feeling almost unbearable. Violin has no frets, no visual markers guiding fingers to correct pitch. You find every note by feel, by ear, by cultivation of internal sense so refined that difference between beautiful and painful measures in fractions of millimeter. This isn't instrument for those needing safety and predictability. This is for those willing to sound terrible, pursuing transcendent. Violin people carry particular intensity. Others find difficult for extended periods. You feel things at level most have learned to mute. Haven't figured out how to turn down volume on your own emotional reception. Walking into room, you pick up tensions others don't consciously notice. Hear unspoken conversations beneath pleasant surface talk. This sensitivity is gift, allows creating profound beauty and connection, speaking truths needing speaking, giving voice to feelings others carry but cannot express. But it's exhausting, isn't it? Always being antenna, always processing signals everyone else comfortably ignores. Shadow of violin archetype manifests as emotional perfectionism bordering on self-punishment. Because you hear difference between what you're producing and what you're reaching for with painful clarity, you're never quite satisfied. Always another layer of expression to uncover, always more authentic phrasing, always haunting sense you haven't touched thing you're trying to communicate. This drive for emotional accuracy serves well in many contexts, makes you attentive friend, perceptive observer, someone refusing surface-level connection. But when same drive turns inward, becomes harsh inner critic saying feelings are too much, sensitivity is burden, inability to lighten up keeps you isolated. Here's what violin types won't acknowledge. Underneath quest for perfect expression lives deep fear of being misunderstood. You've tried communicating something important and watched it land wrong. Seen person interpret carefully chosen words in ways never intended. Or worse, been told you're overreacting, being dramatic, making big deal of nothing. Invalidations cutting especially deep because you know what you're feeling is real, even if can't always articulate why. So you keep refining, searching for precise pitch and vibrato and phrasing that finally lets someone else hear what you hear, feel what you feel. Violin becomes both tool and symbol of this quest, instrument demanding absolute precision, but offering infinite expressive possibility in return. Violin archetype connects to what Jung called feeling function, but not emotions bubbling randomly. This is feeling as sophisticated evaluative capacity, ability to discern subtle differences in quality, meaning relational dynamics. Violin people are natural empaths, not in trendy internet sense where empathy means being nice. Real empathy is capacity to accurately perceive and resonate with another person's inner state, and that comes with significant costs. You can't turn it off when inconvenient, can't stop noticing pain in someone's voice or loneliness behind bright social performance. This means often carrying emotional weight that isn't yours, absorbing atmospheres and moods without conscious intention, feeling exhausted after social interactions others found energizing. Your practical step for next 72 hours involves specific boundary practice. Find moment when about to absorb someone else's emotional state. Friend venting, walking into tense room, reading something triggering empathic response. Before automatically attuning to external frequency, pause. Place one hand on chest, one on belly, and ask, "What am I feeling right now?" before I take on what's in front of me. Notice your own emotional baseline, your inner state separate from stimulus. You don't have to cut off from others' feelings entirely. That violates your nature. But can learn identifying where you end and they begin. This distinction is crucial for violin types who often lose themselves resonating with others. Your anchor phrase, "My sensitivity is not flaw to fix." Return to these words when world tells you to toughen up. Stop being so affected. Develop thicker skin. Violin's lack of frets isn't design flaw. It's precisely what allows instrument to sing with human expressiveness, to bend notes and slide between pitches, mimicking voice crying or laughing. Your emotional range and perceptual sensitivity aren't problems to solve. They're source of deepest gifts. Challenge isn't becoming less sensitive, but developing strength to hold sensitivity without being destroyed by it. Stay with me one more moment. The next phrase will become anchor you return to tomorrow morning. Acoustic guitar waiting on third pedestal carries different energy. Warmer, more portable, less dependent on external structures or perfect conditions. If this called you, you value autonomy above almost everything. Need freedom to pick up and move, to tell your stories in your own way without requiring orchestra or audience permission. Guitar is campfire instrument, traveling companion, tool of solitary songwriter needing no one else to make complete music. You carry it on back, pull out when inspiration strikes, create entire worlds with 6 strings and voice. This self-sufficiency is core psychological orientation. You've learned not depending on systems or people that might disappear. Built life around things you control and carry. Guitar people are rebels in subtle ways. Not necessarily loud protesters, but individuals quietly refusing scripts they didn't write. You probably started teaching yourself before anyone suggested lessons, figuring chord shapes through trial and error rather than waiting for someone to show proper technique. Something in you needs discovering things firsthand, doesn't fully trust knowledge coming pre-packaged from authority figures. This makes you resourceful, adaptable, capable of surviving and thriving where others feel lost without support systems. But also means you've spent significant portions of life alone, not always by choice, but because you've convinced yourself needing others is weakness you can't afford. Shadow of guitar archetype shows as isolation disguised as independence. You tell yourself you prefer solitude, work better alone, other people just slow you down or compromise vision, and there's truth in that. But underneath preference lives fear that if you really let people in, if you become genuinely interdependent rather than self-sufficient, you'll lose mobility and freedom feeling essential to survival. Guitar types often grew up in unstable environments where people supposed to be reliable weren't. where structures supposed to provide security collapsed. So you learned packing light, keeping important things portable, never counting on external conditions remaining favorable long. Guitar became perfect symbol of this adaptation. Instrument needing no electricity or accompaniment, sounded complete even when completely alone. Now shift to drums on fourth pedestal, because these two, guitar and drums, represent interesting polarity guitar people struggle integrating. Where guitar is melody and story and individual expression, drums are pure rhythm, pure pulse, pure physical grounding in present moment. Drum people don't intellectualize or narrate experience. They embody it, move with it, let whole body become instrument. If drawn to drums instead or alongside guitar, you need staying connected to primal rhythms, to heartbeat underneath all complex melodies and harmonies. You probably can't sit still long, need to move and tap and channel physical energy in ways more sedentary types find exhausting watching. Drummers are timekeeper, foundation, tribal pulse everyone else builds on. This role can feel invisible. Nobody hums drum part leaving concert, but it's absolutely essential. Without drummer, whole structure falls apart. With good drummer, even mediocre musicians lock into something powerful. Drum people comfortable in supporting roles, finding satisfaction holding groove rather than taking spotlight. Often steady ones in friend groups, people others unconsciously rely on for grounding when everything feels chaotic. But shadow. Drum types become so identified with being foundation, they forget they're allowed falling apart sometimes, needing support rather than always providing it. Psychological difference between guitar and drums maps fundamental human tension. Need for autonomy versus need for belonging. Guitar represents individuating impulse, part that must become yourself separate from tribe. Needs discovering and expressing unique voice even if means standing alone. Drums represent collective pulse, recognition you're part of something larger. That individual rhythm only makes sense relating to rhythms around you. Healthy adults need both, capacity to stand alone and capacity to merge into collective flow, but most develop one side more than other. If you chose guitar, growth edge probably involves learning, playing with others, letting carefully constructed autonomy soften enough for genuine collaboration. This means practicing vulnerability, allowing rhythm to be influenced by someone else's, trusting you won't lose yourself if you stop maintaining vigilant independence. Your practical step for next 72 hours. Seek one situation where you deliberately rely on someone else for something you'd normally handle yourself. Notice discomfort, urge to take back control. Story mind tells about what it means needing help. You don't have to like it. Just notice, with same attention, you bring learning difficult chord progression. If you chose drums, growth edge involves opposite movement. Learning stepping out of support role occasionally, letting yourself be melody rather than rhythm, risking vulnerability of being heard and seen rather than felt. This is harder than sounds for drum types, because being foundation feels safe in ways being focused doesn't. Your practical step. Find one moment in next 72 hours where you share personal desire or need serving no one else, purely about what you want, rather than what group needs. Notice guilt. Sense you're being selfish. Discomfort of taking space without justifying through usefulness. Guitar anchor phrase, interdependence is not dependence. You can let people in without losing autonomy. Collaborate without surrendering voice. Drum anchor phrase, the rhythm needs rest. You're allowed stopping holding everything together, letting someone else keep time while you catch breath. Movement from piano to violin to guitar to drums traces journey from structure to feeling to autonomy to collective pulse. Four essential psychological capacities complete humans learn accessing fluidly depending on what situations require. You don't abandon primary instrument, your home base, but you develop others, learning to play full range rather than living exclusively in one pattern. That's where real freedom lives. Now the practice tying four instruments together, brief exercise revealing something about inner rhythm you might not consciously notice. Find quiet space where you won't be interrupted for next 90 seconds, eyes open or closed, whatever feels natural. Begin bringing attention to breath, not changing it, just noticing natural inhale and exhale. Now imagine standing in front of those four white pedestals again. Black piano left, violin with bow second, acoustic guitar third, silver drums right. Instead of choosing one, imagine walking slowly past all four and noticing which makes sound as you pass. You don't play it. It plays itself, just for a moment. Maybe single chord from piano, quick violin bow stroke, guitar strum, drum hit. Which instrument spoke without you touching it? That's your unconscious calling, archetypal energy wanting attention right now, which might differ from what you consciously chose at beginning. If same instrument, notice what confirmation feels like in body. If different, pay attention to surprise, resistance, or recognition arising. Instrument that sounded on its own represents psychological capacity you need developing or reclaiming in this life chapter. If piano called out, you need more structure now, more boundaries, more conscious organization of chaos. If violin sang, you need honoring sensitivity, stop apologizing for feeling deeply, and start seeing it as valuable information. If guitar strummed, you need reclaiming autonomy, remembering you're allowed have an own rhythm separate from what others expect. If drums hit, you need grounding, returning to body and present moment instead of living entirely in head or plans. Here's concrete step for today or tomorrow. Do one small thing representing your instrument's energy. Piano people, create one area of order in living space. Organize one drawer or corner that's been chaotic. Violin people, spend 10 minutes writing or voice recording unfiltered feelings about something mattering, no editing, no making it sound reasonable. Guitar people, take yourself somewhere alone that you enjoy. No productive purpose, just for pleasure of own company. Drum people, put on music and move for one song. Let body lead instead of thoughts. These aren't metaphors. They're actual practices beginning to shift relationship with archetypal energy. Four instruments on pedestals aren't really about music. They're about different ways human consciousness organizes itself, different strategies we develop navigating inner and outer reality. Piano builds cathedrals of logic and harmony where chaos can be held and transformed. Violin refuses settling for anything less than emotional precision, insisting feelings matter and deserve expressing with same rigor brought to intellectual pursuits. Guitar claims right to individual voice and mobility, to stories not requiring institutional approval or collaborative agreement. Drums remember what we forget when caught in personal narratives, that we're animals with heartbeats, part of rhythms much older than individual concerns. You need all four, eventually. Question isn't which is best or most advanced. Question is which you've been avoiding, which archetypal capacity remains underdeveloped or actively rejected in psyche. Most psychological suffering comes not from having flaws, but from being lopsided, from over-relying on one or two strategies, and refusing developing others. Piano people never learning to feel directly become cold and isolated inside perfect structures. Violin people never developing boundaries get overwhelmed by intensity they can't contain. Guitar people never allowing genuine interdependence end up lonely despite self-sufficiency. Drum people never claiming individual voice disappear into service roles and forget having desires separate from collective need. Integration doesn't happen through willpower or intellectual understanding. It happens through practice, through deliberately engaging instrument you've been avoiding, through letting yourself be bad at unfamiliar archetypal mode, until slowly, awkwardly, it becomes another possibility rather than threat. If guitar person, this might mean joining something, class, group, project where coordinating with others and can't just do it your way. If drum person, might mean creating something just for you, serving no practical purpose and benefiting no one but yourself. If piano person, might mean deliberately making mess, starting something before having full plan, letting yourself improvise instead of execute. If violin person, might mean choosing logic over feeling just once, honoring what makes sense even when emotions are screaming otherwise. Here's detail promised at beginning. Thing conscious mind didn't expect. Instrument you chose isn't actually about you in isolation. It's about what you needed surviving your specific early environment. Piano people often grew up in chaos and built structure as life raft. Violin people often grew up being told feelings didn't matter and developed hypersensitivity as proof they did. Guitar people often grew up in unreliable systems and learned self-sufficiency as survival. Drum people often grew up in families needing steady presence and stepped into that role before ready. Your instrument was adaptation, and it worked. But what works at 7 doesn't always serve you at 27 or 47. Invitation now is expanding beyond adaptive strategy, reclaiming archetypal capacities you had suppressing to survive. This doesn't mean abandoning primary instrument, means learning playing others well enough that you have choices. When life requires structure, access piano energy. When requiring emotional authenticity, access violin energy. When requiring autonomy, access guitar energy. When requiring grounding and presence, access drum energy. You become fluid, responsive, whole. If this exploration resonated, if you found yourself recognizing patterns you haven't named before, consider leaving comment with 2 things. Which instrument drew you initially, and 1 word describing what you felt when imagining it playing itself. Not paragraph, not explanation, just instrument and word. That simple naming helps integrate what you've discovered here, turns passive reception into active participation. And if curious about other archetypal patterns, other symbolic languages revealing hidden psyche aspects, more explorations coming, different symbols, same underlying invitation, knowing yourself more completely. 4 pedestals remain where they are, instruments waiting in distinct positions, each holding key to different chamber of inner world. You've identified home base, seen your shadow, received invitation to expand. What you do with that invitation is entirely up to you, but now at least you know instruments are there. Ready being played whenever you're ready, learning their specific languages. Rhythm of your soul isn't fixed. It's alive, evolving, waiting for you, discovering its full range.